Hey, what's up YouTube? My name's Brett Bodkins and this is a video I've been looking to make for quite a while. It's recently become an explosive issue with Nikon's release of its new mirrorless Z-series cameras. The issue I'm referring to is whether or not you need a dual card slot in your camera. I'm making this video because I do have a slightly different view than other commenters I've seen on this issue. I think it's important to have a look at the history of the situation. Back in the film days, there was no backup of your images. You shot your images on the film. If there was an issue before or during development, you lost your images. If you didn't have any prints made and something happened to the negatives, you lost everything. For many years after the advent of digital, you only had one card slot. With digital, it's up to you to create multiple backups of your files. You have the responsibility to back up your hard drive and preferably create an off-site backup in case of something like a fire. Not everybody has to take these threats seriously, but serious photographers do. The argument that back in the good old days there was no backup will not hold up when you have to tell a client that you've lost their images. I think it's important to understand that the second card slot's relevance is totally dependent on how you set it up to behave. Do you use the second card slot as an overflow for the first or as a redundant backup of the first card slot? I use mine as a backup and I always reformat my cards after uploading and backing up my files. I've had very few errors over the years, but every once in a while I've had to go to the second card slot to get my photos. Usually it's only been an image or two that somehow got corrupted and I had to pull from the second card slot, but I've heard of others who've had entire card failures. The argument that I've seen thrown around is that it's mostly wedding photographers that need this extra line of security. Personally, as mostly a landscape shooter, I find this feature invaluable. Of course, the most commonly cited example is the one where you take an expensive trip to an exotic location and you need that extra backup. The argument that you'll see here is that somebody could still steal your camera and you would lose the images anyway. There have been times on my trips where I've actually swapped out that second card and put it in my pocket just in case. As someone who has taken these big trips, I would not enjoy only having one card slot, but I've also taken many small trips nearby my house, sometimes hitting a location 5 to 10 times trying to get an image. The idea that you could go out and reshoot an image if you lost it is kind of silly, as the lighting and other circumstances usually will change. The same holds true for model shoots where you would lose keeper images even if you were able to create new good ones. To me, losing a whole day's worth of shooting is not a risk I'm willing to take, as that's a day of your life that you will not get back. The common view seems to be that images shot for a client are the only images worth worrying about losing. However, as someone who often shoots and then tries to sell images after the fact, this is not a thoughtful view. I hear a lot of people saying that they only take photos of their family. However, I urge you to consider that these family photos may be more important than other categories we've already hit on earlier. Some of my most treasured photos are the ones of family, friends, and loved ones over the years. The category of photos that seem to be the lowest on the scale are the artsy ones that a photographer goes out and shoots for themselves. However, some of those have been the most satisfying to me emotionally, as well as most important to my photography career. In fact, I can't really think of many types of photos that are not worth this extra level of security, and it was a given on most serious cameras for many years that you would have a second card slot. The argument on the Z-series camera seems to be that size is a concern and that the camera is too small to support 2 card slots. However, I doubt this position. All you have to do is look at their 7000 series of DSLR. From 2010 to 2017, the 7000 series always had 2 card slots until the 7500 released, in which they only put one single SD card slot. There were no changes to form factor, size, or anything of the sort. It was a decision by Nikon to not only save some money, but also to differentiate it from the pro-level cameras. Basically, the bean counter said that you couldn't get this feature in a $1,000 camera, that you had to now spend $2,000 to get this feature. There were some other features stripped from this camera that this series had always had as well. I had hoped that Nikon would feel the pushback from the D7500 decision to realize that most serious photographers require the second card slot. I'm a big fan of moving to a faster, sturdier, and likely higher capacity card slot than the SD cards in professional level cameras, and I have no issue with having to buy a few of the new style. I have no problem with having an XQD and an SD card in my Nikon D500, but the idea of having a single card slot in a professional level camera in 2018 is ridiculous. I can give the Z-series a pass for being the first generation of mirrorless camera from Nikon. However, the evidence shown in the 7500 is a bad sign. This is not a feature to be thrown away as a luxury, but requires the consumers to push back against brands or models that attempt this. If you personally don't care about this issue, then buy any camera that you want, but understand why it does matter to so many serious photographers. Sometimes you have to lose images to understand their true value. I urge all of you to back up your images onto another hard drive and put one in a remote location in case the worst happens. Be prepared for the worst, because losing the images you've worked so hard for can be devastating. Alright guys, I hope this video was able to help you out and maybe just give you a few insights into the card slot issue that seems to be such a big issue in the last couple weeks. I hope Nikon will consider this more thoughtfully in the future, and that cameras coming out over the next 6 or 8 months will not skimp out on this feature, as it is very important to most serious photographers.